What happens when two of the most powerful women in entertainment find themselves on the same stage? With years of underlying tension finally boiling over into an explosive confrontation that leaves everyone speechless. Today, we're diving into the most shocking moment in recent television history, where Angelina Jolie completely dismantled Meghan Markle live on The View in a way that had viewers rewinding their screens just to make sure they witnessed what they thought they did. If you want to see how this incredible drama unfolded, make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below, because you will not believe what happened next. The View studio was buzzing with its usual energy when Whoopi Goldberg announced the day's guest lineup. Meghan Markle was already seated at the table, promoting her latest charitable initiative. When producers announced that Angelina Jolie would be joining as a surprise guest to discuss her humanitarian work, the moment Angelina walked onto the set, you could feel the temperature drop. These two women had never publicly crossed paths before, but everyone in Hollywood knew there was history there, unspoken but undeniable. "Well, this is unexpected," Meghan said, her voice carrying just enough edge to make everyone lean forward. She adjusted her position in her chair, clearly caught off guard by Angelina's sudden appearance. "I wasn't aware we'd be sharing the panel today." Angelina settled into her seat with that signature grace of hers, barely glancing in Meghan's direction. "Sometimes the most important conversations happen when we least expect them," she replied, her tone measured, but somehow loaded with meaning. "I think our viewers deserve to hear different perspectives on what real humanitarian work actually looks like." The co-hosts exchanged glances, sensing immediately that this wasn't going to be a typical celebrity interview. Joy Behar tried to lighten the mood with a joke about having two powerhouse women on the same panel, but neither Meghan nor Angelina laughed. Instead, they were locked in what could only be described as a polite but deadly staring contest. "No, Angelina," Meghan began, her voice taking on that practiced tone she'd perfected during her royal days. "I've always admired your work, though I have to say, some of us believe that true change comes from working within established systems, rather than just making headlines." The studio fell silent. Even the camera operators seemed to hold their breath. Angelina's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes, a kind of sharpening that anyone who knew her recognized as dangerous territory. "That's interesting," Angelina replied, her voice still calm but with an undertone that made everyone pay attention. "I've spent 2 decades actually visiting refugee camps, not just talking about them at charity galas. I've held dying children in my arms, not just posed for photo opportunities. So when you talk about working within systems, I have to wonder which systems you're referring to exactly." Meghan's composure cracked just slightly, a flush creeping up her neck. "I think we all serve in our own ways. My work with various organizations has been quite impactful, though perhaps not as, shall we say, theatrical as some approaches." The word theatrical hung in the air like a challenge. Whoopi tried to intervene, but Angelina was already responding, her voice still controlled, but with an edge that cut through the studio like a blade. "Theatrical," Angelina repeated, letting the word roll off her tongue. "You know what I find? Theatrical, giving interviews about compassion from multi-million-dollar mansions. Talking about helping people while wearing jewelry worth more than most families make in a year. That's what I call theatrical." The audience was completely silent now, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Meghan's media training kicked in, and she tried to smile, but it came out more like a grimace. "I hardly think personal attacks are necessary," Meghan said, her voice rising slightly. "We're here to discuss charitable work, not to engage in petty jealousy disguised as moral superiority." Jealousy. Angelina's eyebrows raised slightly, and for the first time, she looked directly at Meghan with something that might have been amusement if it weren't so cold. "Of what, exactly?" "The ability to turn every cause into a personal branding opportunity. The talent for making every tragedy somehow about your own struggles. Because if that's what you think this is about, you've misunderstood everything." The co-hosts were scrambling now, trying to figure out how to handle what was clearly becoming a full-blown confrontation. Sarah N. attempted to redirect the conversation toward their respective charitable projects, but both women ignored her completely. "You know what?" Meghan said, leaning forward with her hands clasped. "I've tried to be gracious here, but I think our viewers deserve to know what this is really about. This isn't about humanitarian work at all. This is about someone who can't handle the fact that other people have found ways to make a difference without needing to collect accolades and awards for basic human decency. The studio was electric now, with audience members literally on the edge of their seats. Angelina remained perfectly still for a moment, then slowly leaned back in her chair, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "You want to know what this is really about?" Angelina said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper, which somehow made it more intimidating than if she'd been shouting. "This is about the difference between someone who does the work and someone who performs the work. This is about the difference between changing lives and changing your image. And right now, everyone watching can see exactly which category each of us falls into." Meghan's face went through a series of expressions, from shock to anger to something that looked almost like panic. She clearly hadn't expected Angelina to be so direct, so unflinching in her assessment. The audience was completely captivated, some with their mouths literally hanging open as they watched this battle of titans unfold in real time. "That's rich, coming from someone who's made an entire career out of playing the victim," Meghan shot back, her voice shaking slightly with barely contained rage. "At least I don't need to adopt children from around the world to prove how caring I am. Some of us actually create our own families instead of collecting them like trophies." The gasp that went through the studio was audible. Even Whoopi looked stunned. Angelina's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes that made everyone understand. They had just witnessed Meghan cross a line that should never have been crossed. "You want to talk about my children?" The voice was deadly quiet now, each word measured and precise. "Let me tell you about my children. Every single one of them came from places where they had nothing, where they were unwanted, where they were dying. And now they have everything they need, not because I wanted good publicity, but because I wanted to save their lives. Can you say the same about anything you've ever done?" Meghan realized immediately that she'd made a catastrophic mistake, but it was too late to take it back. She tried to salvage the situation with damage control. "Look, I didn't mean to. I think we're both getting a little heated here." "No," Angelina interrupted, and her voice carried such authority that it cut through everything else. "You meant exactly what you said. You think humanitarian work is some kind of competition, where we compare our personal lives instead of the actual impact we've made. So let's compare, shall we?" The co-hosts were looking at each other with expressions of pure terror, realizing they were completely out of their depth. This had gone far beyond a typical celebrity disagreement into something much more personal and devastating. "I've spent the last 20 years traveling to countries most people can't even pronounce," Angelina continued, her voice gaining strength with each word. "I've sat with mothers who've watched their children starve. I've held hands with women who've been brutalized in wars that the world ignores. I've used my platform, my money, my time, my life to try to make their suffering mean something. And you, what have you done? You've given speeches about empowerment while living in luxury that most people can't even imagine." Meghan's PR training was failing her completely now. She was visibly struggling to maintain her composure, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the edge of the table. "I've worked with numerous organizations. I've raised awareness for important causes." "Awareness," Angelina repeated, and somehow she made the words sound like an insult. "You've raised awareness. Do you know what I've raised? Millions of dollars that actually reached the people who needed it. Do you know what I've built? Schools, medical clinics, safe houses for women fleeing violence. Do you know what I've done? I've changed laws, influenced policy, saved actual lives. But please, tell me more about your awareness campaigns." The silence in the studio was deafening. You could hear the camera's worry, the soft hum of the lights, even someone's phone buzzing in the audience. Meghan looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair, but Angelina wasn't finished. "You want to know what really bothers me?" Angelina asked, leaning forward slightly. "It's not that you're ineffective. It's that you're taking up space that could be used by people who actually want to do the work. Every time you attach yourself to a cause, you make it about you instead of about the people who need help. You turn suffering into content for your personal narrative." Joy Behar finally found her voice and tried to interrupt. "Ladies, maybe we should take a step back here." "No," Angelina said without looking away from Meghan. "I think it's time. Someone said what everyone in this industry has been thinking. You came out of nowhere, married into relevance, and then decided that made you qualified to speak for people whose struggles you've never experienced. You've never been hungry. You've never been homeless. You've never been powerless. So what? Gives you the right to position yourself as their voice. Meghan's face was red now, her careful composure completely shattered. You don't know anything about my struggles, about what I've been through. ... Your struggles? Angelina's voice rose for the first time, and the effect was electric. Your struggles. You struggled with negative press coverage while living in a palace. You struggled with protocol while wearing crowns worth more than most people's houses. You struggled with criticism while having access to resources that billions of people will never see. Those aren't struggles, those are inconveniences. The audience was riveted, some people actually leaning forward in their seats as if they were watching a prize fight. Meghan looked around desperately, perhaps hoping one of the co-hosts would rescue her. But everyone seemed frozen by the intensity of what they were witnessing. You think because you faced some negative headlines, you understand oppression, Angelina continued, her voice building to something that felt like a crescendo. You think because you felt uncomfortable in your privileged position, you can speak for people who face real violence, real poverty, real desperation. That's not just wrong, it's insulting to everyone who's actually fighting for their lives. Meghan tried one more time to regain control of the situation. I never claimed to speak for anyone. I've always been clear that I'm using my platform to amplify other voices. ... double quotes, amplify. Angelina laughed, but there was no humor in it. You don't amplify other voices. You drown them out. Every cause you touch becomes about your journey, your growth, your healing. You've turned activism into therapy. And that's not just ineffective, it's harmful. The tension in the studio was so thick, you could cut it with a knife. Meghan looked like she might actually cry, her careful media persona crumbling completely under Angelina's relentless assault, and Angelina showed no signs of stopping, her eyes blazing with a passion that made it clear this wasn't just about professional disagreement. This was about something much deeper. The camera operators were having a field day. Switching between close-ups of Meghan's devastated expression and Angelina's unwavering intensity, the audience was completely silent, as if everyone understood they were witnessing something that would be talked about for years to come. Meghan took a shaky breath, clearly trying to summon whatever strength she had left. You know what, Angelina? I think you're projecting. I think you're threatened by the fact that there are other women out there who can make a difference without needing to turn their personal lives into a circus. Maybe the real issue here is that you can't handle not being the only celebrity activist. In the room, for a moment, it seemed like Meghan might have found her footing again. There was a flicker of hope in her eyes, as if she thought she'd finally landed a blow that might shift the dynamic. But Angelina's response was swift and devastating. Threatened. Angelina's voice was almost conversational now, which somehow made it even more menacing. Let me tell you what threatens me. What threatens me is watching people suffer while celebrities play dress-up as activists. What threatens me is seeing real issues get buried under vanity projects disguised as charity work. What threatens me is knowing that while we're sitting here in this air-conditioned studio, there are people dying who could have been saved if the money spent on your PR campaigns had actually reached them. Whoopi finally found the courage to try to intervene again. Angelina, I think we need to ... No, Whoopi, Angelina said, still not taking her eyes off Meghan. I think this conversation is exactly what needs to happen. Because for too long, people have been polite about this. For too long, we've pretended that all charity work is created equal, that good intentions are enough, that showing up is the same as making a difference. And meanwhile, real people with real problems get forgotten because their stories aren't glamorous enough for Instagram. Meghan's voice was barely above a whisper now, but her words carried the desperation of someone making a last stand. You're being incredibly unfair. You don't know what I've sacrificed, what I've given up to try to make a difference. Sacrificed. Angelina's eyebrows shot up, and for the first time she looked genuinely incredulous. You sacrificed what? Exactly, your privacy, your comfort, your ability to control your narrative. Those aren't sacrifices, those are the basic requirements of public service. You want to talk about sacrifice? I've sacrificed my safety, traveling to war zones. I've sacrificed my health, contracting diseases in refugee camps. I've sacrificed my career opportunities, turning down roles to focus on humanitarian work. I've sacrificed my financial security, spending millions of my own money on causes that will never make headlines. The co-hosts were looking at each other with expressions of complete helplessness. This had gone so far beyond their ability to control that they seemed to have given up entirely, resigned to letting this play out to its inevitable conclusion. But you know what the biggest sacrifice is? Angelina continued, her voice building to something that felt like a final verdict. The biggest sacrifice is giving up the luxury of making everything about yourself. It's accepting that your role is to serve, not to be served. It's understanding that the moment you make a cause about your brand, instead of about the people you're supposed to be helping, you've failed everyone who trusted you. Meghan looked around the studio one more time, perhaps hoping for some kind of rescue, but found only faces staring back at her with expressions, ranging from shock to fascination to something that might have been pity. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. I never wanted any of this. I never asked for this level of scrutiny, this level of criticism. I just wanted to help people. Then help them, Angelina said, and her voice was quiet now, but carried more weight than anything she'd said before. Stop talking about helping them. Stop performing helping them. Stop making their problems about your journey. Just help them. And if you can't figure out how to do that without making it about yourself, then step aside and let people who can actually do the work take over. The silence that followed was absolute. Not a single person in the studio moved or made a sound. Meghan looked like she'd been physically struck, her face pale and her hands shaking visibly. Angelina sat back in her chair, her expression calm again, as if she'd simply been discussing the weather. Finally, Whoopi found her voice. Well, I think we're going to need to take a commercial break here. But as the cameras kept rolling for a few more seconds, viewers could see Meghan's face crumpling, the last vestiges of her composure finally giving way. She looked like someone who had just realized that everything she thought she knew about herself had been systematically dismantled on live television. Angelina, meanwhile, maintained her composure completely, straightening her jacket and checking her watch as if she had somewhere important to be. The contrast was stark and unmistakable. One woman had been revealed as all facade, while the other had shown herself to be exactly what she appeared to be, uncompromising and absolutely certain of her principles. As the show finally cut to commercial, the audience sat in stunned silence, processing what they had just witnessed. This wasn't just a disagreement between two celebrities. This was a masterclass in how to completely dismantle someone's public persona using nothing but facts, passion, and an unwavering commitment to truth. The aftermath of this confrontation would be felt for months to come, but in that moment, everyone in the studio understood that they had just watched something unprecedented. Angelina Jolie had not just criticized Meghan Markle, she had systematically exposed the difference between genuine advocacy and performative activism in a way that left no room for doubt about which category each woman fell into. What did you think of this incredible showdown? Did Angelina go too far? Or was it time someone finally said what everyone was thinking? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more explosive celebrity moments that you won't see anywhere else. And here's a question for you. Do you think Meghan will ever recover from this public humiliation? Or has her reputation been permanently damaged by this confrontation?